One. Hello, and we're recording. This is your host, Joachim Stroh again, with another session of the social ledger. Today, we want to talk about an interesting, widening view aspect of the social ledger. And for that, we had a great discussion last time, and I put together a diagram that I'm going to share now on the screen. Everybody see that?
Got it.
Got it? Good. So this talks about the social ledger from a slightly sort of, I don't want to say new perspective, but an interesting perspective that I haven't considered before. This is something that is related to a stitching protocol here, as I call it, and a way to actually gamify the social ledger, but not in a typical, token leadership board kind of gamification process that you see in so many tools out there. It's not that kind of give me the token, give me the badge of honor there. Not that kind of gamification, but a different kind of gamification. I would call it more like a playful environment. That allows you to sort of participate in a gameful fashion. And let me drill down on that. What do I mean by that? So first of all, let's talk about these two types of spaces here. On the left side, you see what I call the shared space. So this could be a context of a project space. So my example here is Project AI. So some kind of artificial intelligence project, something that a group of people want to do in the AI space. That's the shared space. So multiple team members working in this space. Adjacent to that is what I call the personal space. So this is a context of an individual, say Jim here, and this is a space where Jim is collecting his cards. So these are his, and he sort of owns these cards. So the concept of ownership is very important here. And along with that notion of ownership of cards, Jim came up with that line here last time. Find that fascinating. What Jim is capable of doing. Okay, let's keep that in mind for a second, because that is how you actually play in this environment. So let's go over some of the example cards here. Let's start with one that contains Jim's identity, right? So here's one card that has some profile information about Jim. He can edit this in his personal space, right? So he pulls out that card, and it's connected to an identity provider, right? So in this example, we have auth0 here as an identity provider for Jim, right? For anybody who wants to play in these social ledger spaces, right? So Jim can now use this card here and say, okay, I want to become, let's say, a member of this shared space, right? So the activity would be sort of, quote unquote, play this card, right? So move this card, let's say, into this space here again, that's the shared space here of Project AI, right? So Jim's card would appear here as a new member of that space, right? And you can see along Jim's card, there are other members, obviously, in this space. There's John, there's Jane, and they're all connected to, again, the auth0, integration with the identification system. So other cards here. So one move here Jim has, moving that into this space. And you notice also that the activity on that card changes the moment you do that, because the context is changing, right? So from being a card in your personal space, that's the interface into auth0, it becomes like a way to, understand what Jim is doing here, understand his profile information that he shares now with the team member of this space, and maybe a way to, I just put in an example here, to ask Jim questions, right? So directly reach out to him, because now you know a little bit more about Jim, and you can head into a conversation with Jim. So that's all tied to this move by Jim to play in this space, right? But it doesn't stop here, of course. Jim now has all kinds of capabilities, right? So let's look at those capabilities. And all of these colorful cards here are examples of capabilities that Jim has. One of them is he builds his collections, right? So let's say he has a social bookmarking tool like Wallaback, So that's just a simple way to collect bookmarks, right? So you go to interesting websites and you find an article, you bookmark that, put it into the Wombat tool. So Jim has a lot of these collections, and see these stacked cards here too, right? So that means many, many different collections. Now Jim says, okay, there's a project AI, cool. What I can do is, let me pull up my collection for AI, okay? Let's say Jim has a sub-collection somewhere in Wallaback that is dealing with AI issues. Now you can offer to say, I play this card now here and add that to the shared space, right? So Jim's card appears here. There's a sub-collection here in terms of AI, right? AI-related stuff. And anybody who's an team member of the space has access to that. Right, so they can click, they can add more links if they want to, right? And they can see the collection essentially, right? And here's the kicker. Now Jim remains the owner of that card, because it's much easier to say, hey, there's a specific person who actually created that card, who owns it, who's dealing with all of the nitty-gritty details of the card. And by the way, we can reward that person for doing that, right? So now, because he played that card, you see, and people are starting to use this card or accept that card in the space, we can generate a flow here, a flow of tokens, of coins, whatever it is, right, into some kind of circular motion here. And I'm putting here, that's say the open money interface down here. So that would record the fact that we're using Jim's service here to collect, to maintain the collection around AI, right? So it's recorded here in this ledger here. And Jim now gets rewards for that, right? Because now there's a group of people who are using his card, right? And if it's a monetary reward or something, you know, it goes right into some kind of a wallet on Jim's end, right? Says, yes, they've been using it for quite some time here, and then Jim would get rewarded for that effort. And not only that, because Jim owns the card, he sort of collects, also has some responsibility, right? So Jim would say, yes, I support you guys here. And if I come across more articles about AI, I come back to my personal space and just update this, right? I'm adding another link here to my collection in AI, which would immediately be, you know, seen here. See these counters here on the top right, says #1. So that means there's a new link since the last time you visited the shared space. A new link now on AI, let me check it out, right? Let me read that article. Everybody benefits from that. Just because Jim is maintaining this connection here, right? Yeah.
Just very nice, love it. Want to make the point that the open money part in this is numbers. The what the agent said, you know. It's almost like we're just a number counter. We don't. The open money makes no decisions about what is done with the numbers. We just keep the numbers.
Okay.
An abacus in a way. So absolutely supporting the internal traffic in multitude of dimensions. Yep. Easy to open account tracks through open money, which can then mean whatever it is decided they're meant to mean. And that's the other side, you know, when you get over there into, so what do these numbers do? Then you get into reward structures, whether it transfers into money, whether it shows up as a thermometer on the side of the New York Times or something. I don't know. It's just, numbers are just numbers. Open money is open metrics. It's the abacus, basically. It doesn't care. It counts.
Okay. That's cool, Jim. That's cool, Mike. So then, you know, this is indicating, you know, just sort of a flow here, starting from here, that we acknowledge the use of that, right? And then some number, you know, that Jim can determine because it's his collection, right? And it's his services actually, right? So he can value that. And
sovereign stuff all the way.
That's right. And it's Jim's card, right? And it's an easy transaction, right? Because all Jim does is he plays that card, right? Moves it into the space, and immediately the aspect of value comes into play here. That's what I find so interesting about this.
Yeah.
Because if nobody wants that card here,
there's no value.
That's right. It's of no value. They can essentially reject it, right?
Decline, ignore.
Yes, yeah. You can even tie this to sort of a decision-making process, I was thinking, right? So a new card appears here, and initially it says, you know, let's say there's a different button that says accept, right? So you can actually decide as a member of this space to say we want to accept that card or not, right? And and then depending on the governance principles and rules you've established for that space, say everybody accepts
depending on the rules. It's lovely. Everything depends on the rules. Yeah.
Norms. I call it norms too, right? So the norm is if one accepts it, if majority accepts it, if all accept it, right? We're in the game. Jim is in the game. His card is there, and maybe at that point there's a number that flows right into this little open money thing, right? Flows right back, say records that, and then it gets updated somewhere here, and then that's connected to Jim's wallet here, right? So he gets a certain reward for that later on.
Agent to agent, track the traffic, agent to agent. That's all.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So this is one example for wallet bag, right? And I've put in some other examples here. An easy one would be feeds, for example. Let's say Jim is a big reader of blog feeds, of some blogs out there for AI, right? So he has created an RSS collection, an RSS feed for 20 different blogs, right? Now he's done this for years, right? So he has this knowledge, what's a good blog, who's posting good stuff out there. He can now take this card here and just like, the wallet bag connection, place this card, so moves this card over here, where it says Jim's feeds, here on the left side. And it's, again, a sub-collection of blogs now for AI, right? And once it's there, you could also track something like a new post coming in. So this 4 would indicate 4 new posts, blog posts on the 20 blogs that Jim had put together there. Let me read those, right? So you can click on this button and then view it, right? So it's another service that Jim provides just by playing this card, right? And then this can go on and on and on, because Jim can have maybe a set of good protocols he's learned, on good governance or good decision making, right? Offer that to the collective. Say he's good at sociocracy, right? And he has some good norms established. We can use those inside the shared space, right? So let's accept those. Jim might have write his own posts, right? So maybe he has, that's the link on the right side. Maybe he has he's an avid Facebook blogger, right? Or has a nice collection or community on Facebook, like John Calvin has, right? So he's consistently writes posts on AI, right? And that's another card we move over here, right? So then you can read Jim's blog posts inside the shared space, or it can even go into the typical services that a community provides, that we're doing also in Dig Live here. Say sending out newsletters, right? Assuming Jim would know about, we have MailTrain that has the capability of sending out newsletters to members, right? So he could play this card and say, okay, I want to be responsible for sending out these campaigns. Place this card here, over here, and now the community has now access to, suddenly has the added capability to say, yes, we can send out newsletters. Whoa, that's so cool. Without anyone in the shared space actually needing to know about how MailTrain works, right, over here. Why? Because that's part of Jim's capability, right? That's his personal space. He has access to MailTrain, and he can handle all of this that's needed to send it out. What's needed from the members would be something like maybe the content, right? So there's an edit button or something where they can provide input to the next newsletter. A simple Word document or the Google document says, here's the next content, and Jim would see that, again, pick it up, move it into the MailTrain thing, and then send it out, and be done with it, right? Again, this is a service Jim can provide inside the shared space, and also would be rewarded, for, if they accept, we want to do some campaigns here, great, accept it, and then it becomes part of the flow of this whole system. That's campaigns, and then it could be, recently I was talking about Alexa skills. Gary, you saw that, right? There's this new nice interface where you can actually build some Alexa skills on a nice UI. And
yes, I saw that. I looked at that quite extensively, and my only objection to that is I find it too inspiring, and I go off on all these tangents of how it could be used. rather than thinking about how to program something like that, which is what I would prefer to be thinking about.
Right. That's cool. So, I mean, in this context, say Jim has been using this Alexa skill thing for a couple of years, and he knows how to build skills. So he can then plug, this skill right into this shared space. And maybe it's already one of the subtrees you can generate with Alexa, with the typical questions you would ask Alexa, and then the typical responses that bot will generate, right? So that kind of, again, skill set and his capacity, his capability of doing that would flow right over into this shared space, right? And he would agree to either use his existing skill sets that he has created, right? Or build something new for this shared space. Remember, this is a different context, right? So obviously the skill sets will depend on that kind of context.
Joachim, speak to us of stitching.
Stitching, okay. We'll get to that. I'm so excited about these cards.
I love it. It's tremendous. And it's cards on the table. It feels like a fractal generator. This feels like the transition from the Metcalfe's concept of network and network effect to the Dave Reed stuff. Groups merging into other groups, strong links, weak links, small group formation. This is very, very powerful. So yeah, let's roll. Let's get stitching. Mm-hmm.
Stitching, yeah, okay, let's get to that, because stitching is yet another level in this diagram. Let's talk about that. So stitching, that's the thing here in the center, right? So you see here's this GraphQL logo on the left side, and there's another one here on the right side. So that means these spaces could be completely separate. That could be a whole different instance of someone providing these cards here in their own environment that we don't even know about. No clue that somebody is doing this, using their own instance of creating these cards. What the stitching allows is to combine Jim's knowledge with the rest of the collective. So whatever Jim was figuring out over his journey there, right? Let's say using something like Wallaback is a great backend. So Jim has created some GraphQL queries to tap into that backend, some mutations to modify the backend, right? And a card, to say, so here are the typical actions, activities I use with this. And he has built content over time, right? So all of this knowledge, the metadata that is stored now, can be stitched together and then become available in another collective. It's like suddenly merging brains here. And all of this knowledge becomes available for anyone on this side here, if they agree, to merge with that, of course. But technically, that's the idea of the stitching. And Jim, I know you know a bit more about this than I do. But technically, we can now reach into the same queries that Jim has available, has at his fingertips than he has himself, using his tool and his credentials. So we sort of bring his credentials into this space and benefit from that, provided that Jim says, yes, you can do that, right? You can use my credentials. It's a little bit like the sudo commands that we talked about in the collective, right? So he grants us, because he still owns the card, right? And he still owns the backend service. Let's say Wallaback would cost $20 a month, right? He owns that connection as his account on Wallaback, right? Assuming it's $20. And he can say, okay, I pay for that basic service, and I know I do something good over here in the AI project. You can do that. And I know I will get some rewards out of this eventually, right? But I do own that. But we have now the capacity to tap through Jim's account, by stitching this together into this kind of knowledge base down here. That's the idea of stitching here.
Thank you. Because that does seem to be the glue.
Yeah, I wish your example wasn't Jim, because I don't. It confuses me. You should make it Alice, but because I don't know when people are talking to me. But in this this self-sovereign tech stack, okay, these my personal space is absolutely private. I control it. If there is no stitching, nobody else can access it. Anything.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is where the user managed authorizations happen.
Yeah.
So that anything I expose explicitly, which is why it's GDPR compliant as long as I can undo the permission.
That's right. That's right, Jim. That goes as far as, if Jim says, no, it's Joe, by the way. So if Joe says,
Nice, Joe.
if Joe says, hey, this is my collection, I no longer want to be affiliated with Project AI, okay? I'm withdrawing this card now, basically, right? He can do this. Why? Because he's still the owner of the card and he has that account. That account information was never shared with the team members, right? They were never able to go in, but through this card-based interface, right? They can access the API, yes, because Joe has granted access to that, right? As soon as he revokes that, the card is gone and the members do not have access to that information anymore, right? So you cannot sort of misuse this, right? And say,
But you can screen scrape. You can collect
oh yeah,
data
sure,
and hold it,
right.
so that once the stuff is out there, it is in some sense out there. And you can bet there's going to be archives of all sorts of shit. Some people will be trolling specifically for it. So
Yes.
You got to accept at some level that once written is writ. Relax. Yeah.
No, and that's okay, Michael, because I'm thinking even Jim also mentioned that there can be a copy function. Besides playing the card, why not introducing a copy function that says, let me take Joe's collection here, right, and copy it into John's collection. So everything that's in here, bam, move it over here, and with the caveat being now John is the owner of that collection here, right? So there are two collections that exist now, right? So from now on, anything that changes has to be maintained. John is responsible, right? The good side is also John would be rewarded for that, right? But it's a copy now that John could use now and actually take this card and move it into another space yet, right? And then offer his service based on what Jim has done in the past, and build that out there. So I do want to encourage this building on top of each other, right? So Jim has started this, and Joe comes in, and John comes in, and they're all building up and want to, create sort of this going back to this generative sequence thing, right?
Yeah, and one thing that I want to comment on is I like the idea that Alice or Bob bring all of their skills in with them, and it's not duplicative necessarily. It's not wasteful for them to bring all these resources in. It actually, when they come in, like the more power, the more skills they have, the more valuable they are to the collective or to the space.
Exactly right, Gary. Right, that's the idea. And not only it's also sort of a man-machine cooperation here in a sense, because you can train your own bots, right? You can train your own bots, Gary, and you've done some hard work in the past to train your bot, right, to respond to certain events or text phrases, whatever it is, right? And you want to provide that kind of services now, to any community that's out there, and you can do this, and you still own that thing. That's the cool stuff, right? The cool part. You still own that card. They know it's you, Gary. They're going to ask you for other bots in the future. Other spaces want to have your services too, right? So there's a whole proliferation of spaces that could use your skill sets there, right?
Proliferation. That's an important component of all of this stuff, and that's what I particularly like about this is the proliferation aspect of it. And I've been deep diving into Jordan Greenhalgh's commentaries on what Backfeed's doing with their distributed autonomous organizational systems. And they're talking about aggregating people's behaviors into AI as a form of collective intelligence, I would say. It's so similar to this, of course. And so I think we should be talking to each other about how these things marry, merge, meet somewhere, because there's differences and there's similarities.
I think once we get the processes defined well, how to use artificial intelligence.
Oh yeah, very complex area.
It will be evidenced. I'm thinking of use cases where we open a space for an activity.
Mm-hmm.
We put in people with skills.
Things happen. There is consequences. Stuff shows up. There are results. It's a growth thing. It's a living thing,
right?
Nurtured by this organizational set of framework.
For GDPR compliance, when you move them in there, it would have to be suggested, and they would have to accept being in that space and the rules of that space in order to affirmatively enter that space.
Yeah.
You know, one thing about this is interesting. These privacy issues are interesting, but when we talk about these permissions that we're going to start granting to other people, I mean, these things are potentially extremely powerful. So, you know, while everybody else is over there worrying about, you know, a little bit of privacy, we're showing a way that these extremely powerful possessions can be passed around and probably handle the privacy issues too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what we're trying to do is enable sharing rather than privacy, but in enabling sharing under the control of the person, it's enabling
gateway.
It's sort of naturally private.
Which brings us back, I guess, to the minimum self-sovereign stack. Because the easiest way to approach this sort of thing, it seems to me, is if there is an easily accessible sort of plug-and-play gateway that people can participate in this space and thus be able to conform to Jim's permit to access, permit to withdraw level. You know, if people got to construct that themselves, they're going to have a long haul, slow uptake.
Right.
But if there's something entertaining going on, and oh, by the way, sign here, explicitly understand this is outside this, inside that, and everything that you do with this ID is GDPR compliant, you know, or something, you know, essentially. Yeah. It's like you're getting away from this nonsense because you are who you say you are. You're taking the responsibility for your actions in this space. That's it.
Right.
As long as we're using other back ends besides our chain, we're not going to be compliant because our endpoints are not going to be compliant. Okay, so that's the reality.
But what is brought into this space?
We can't wait for the world to start implementing the UMA APIs. It's not going to happen from the top down. It's not going to be offered, okay? We just have to start using it ourselves in our organizations and among our organizations. And what is a UMA? UMA call translates into some API call. That could, you know, or an email being sent, whatever. But until phase 3, nobody's going to be compliant.
That's the reality, Jim. Yep. Okay, so yeah, we talked about GDPR before. Let's see if we can wrap this up here. It's past the hour. So this is about playfulness, right? It's about playing cards at the right time in the right sequence, right, to move things forward. That's how I see that. It's to present your skills out there, to proliferate, your skill sets out there to get a lot of things going, right? In many, many different spaces. But the AI space was just one out of, hundreds of spaces that could be out there.
So, cards on the table. A way to put your cards on the table.
Yes, that's it. Perfect metaphor. That's it. Put your cards on the table. Yes.
Yeah.
There's
a table. There's a table to pick your table. Be in table.
That's right.
Yeah. Among many other things, it allows self-uberization.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, you're right. This is very, very powerful. So we're going to join this one very gently and simply. Cards on the table. You are saying, you're making available. Take your card back, but you can put it on the table. Once it's on the table, it's on this table. Here's the rows of this table. So it's a very imaginable context.
Yes, very tangible. Very, very. The metaphor works pretty well. And you can attach that even further and say, once you put the card on the table, there's sort of an agreement that happened at that point, right? And that can go as far as, I was thinking, a contractual agreement, right? So you said you provide these kind of services through your card here, and then it could automatically record that somewhere, right? So that this could trigger something else that says, yes, on a regular basis, I want you to contribute your RSS feed or your collection to our project here. Here's the reward for that, right? Kind of an automatically triggered, schema and contract that can be executed the moment you do this, right? So it's
this for that.
Yeah. Greg Meredith has talked a lot about social contracts and how you're guided into the contracts that fit you or something by mathematically, okay, or algorithmic.
Guided into the contracts that fit you mathematically. I love it. It's the anniversary of the Frankenstein machine story just recently, I believe. Anyway, no, this is tremendous. This recording is available for circulation, is it?
Yeah.
Are you okay with it?
Yeah. I'll put it out there.
Excellent, because I'm going to link it into the conversation that Jordan Greenhall's having about
great.
Many things that are very much related to this. So
yes, they are. His work is great, and he will will resonate a lot with what he's doing and where he's aiming to go to. Great. Thanks, folks.
Let's all aim to go somewhere, because if we don't aim, who knows where we're going.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Another time. Bye-bye.